Hello everybody and welcome back to Julie's Orchids. Today I thought we would have a talk about grow lights. A few months ago I had a viewer, and I'm sorry I cannot find the comment, asked me specifically about my grow lights, and about a year ago I did a video on my Oncidium lighting. I'll put a link to that somewhere up here. And I've made some changes to my lighting since we moved into the new grow room, so I thought it'd be time to do an update on that. And I'm hoping also in this video to sort of break down some of the confusions that you might encounter when you go to the stores to buy your grow lights. So you'll have to excuse me, I've taken some notes. I spent a couple hours this morning kind of doing a little bit of internet research, so this is going to be basic, super basic, but it's kind of geared for those fairly new indoor growers or people that are considering growing, and the whole concept of lights is really what's throwing them off. You look at the box, you hear what people talk about on the internet, and things don't necessarily line up to what you hear people talking about on the internet versus what's actually written on the boxes. And we're going to go kind of all into this in sort of a weird roundabout story kind of way as I explain why I changed from the one kind of lights that I was using to the ones I'm using now. And it's really simple, but we're going to get into that. So, okay, first and foremost, when I first started buying grow lights on the internet, I kind of didn't do my 100% due diligence of research of what I think I should have done in retrospect. I just kind of went to the websites that we're encouraging growers of a green leafy variety, the marijuana growers, because I know that they have a lot of years of experience of growing illicitly and covertly their plants under lights in a lot of areas of the world. So I thought, well, if that works for them, they're, growing for basically the same thing orchid growers are, vegetative growth and bud formation. So I kind of just really went towards those sort of websites, or if I was on eBay or Amazon, there's usually a little telltale marijuana leaf somewhere, usually on the website. So that's when I first started purchasing them. That's sort of where I really went to. And for the most part, it served me quite well. As I mentioned, those kind of growers have been growing covertly under lights for years out of necessity, and they figured out what works and what doesn't work. Now, as I've grown and moved into a bigger growing space, as in the grow room, I find that I was needing to add more lights. And my concern was the cost of running those lights. Now, I do have solar panels on the house, but the panels that I have do not completely and 100% cover my usage, and that's mostly because of my grow lights. So this is where I'm going to get into, when you hear people talking about grow lights on the internet, you're going to hear things like spectrum, wavelength, nanometer. But when you go to the aquaponic stores or the hydroponic stores, or eBay, and you type in LED full spectrum grow lights, you may not get that nomenclature on the box or on the web page. You may see things like 6500 K, capital K, that stands for Kelvin, or 3000 lumens, or they may mention wattage. And so I'm going to go over specifically what you see on the box, and I'm using the box of the plant grow lights that I bought, and the brand I bought was called Intro Grow, and I have both their bloom and their growth bars. But I can say that I've bought a bit more of the growth bars, and I'm supplementing the all-over lighting with the bloom bars, and we'll get into that maybe a little bit as well. But what I can say is that getting into internet research on grow lights can really get complicated and really confusing. So we're going to break down what you see on the box now, and then we'll switch over and kind of talk about what you'll hear other YouTube channels or plant growers talk about in regards to spectrums and things of that nature. So we're going to call this section Confusing Terms on the Boxes. And as I mentioned, I'm specifically going to use the brand of grow light that I have purchased and what they have on their box. And I've downloaded an image of their boxes off the internet because I didn't save my boxes. So I'll put that in here. And you can see that it mentions that this box has 6500 K, that's Kelvin, 3000 lumens, and 26 watts. And so what's a Kelvin, what's a lumen, and what's a watt? We're going to break those down pretty easily. And we'll start with lumens. So lumens is basically radiation per watt. Now, what does that mean? So lumens are the measure of light that the human eye can see. So what you can see is lumens. Kelvins, that's the K, measure how the light looks to the human eye. So it measures how warm or cool the light might look to your eye. So in reality of things, that's not real helpful at all. And we'll get into that, and you'll understand this here in a minute, because this is all dealing with the human eye, keeping in mind we're trying to grow plants. We don't necessarily want to see the plants better with our eyes. We want the plants to grow better. And this is where lumens and kelvins are important. But we also want to do this as inexpensively and using as little electric power as possible, and that's where your watts come in. So watts measure how much power or electric the light uses to produce the light, which means cold hard cash out of your pocket. And this was the main driver for me to make the switch on my lights. So prior to getting the Intro Grow lights that I have, and what I like about Intro Grow, and let me point out here that I'm in no way, shape, or form being sponsored by Intro Grow. I bought these through my own research. I'm talking about these because I use these lights. Intro Grow has no way, shape, or form given me a product or sponsored my channel at all. So this is literally what I'm using and why. So when I first started my collection and I was buying the lights off of the internet, I was growing in a smaller space and I didn't need the length of lights. So Intro Grow is really nice in that they offer 53 centimeter length bulbs and 110, I believe, centimeter length bulbs. And because I moved from the bedroom to my dedicated growing room, I was able to put longer shelves across broader expanses. So I needed the longer bulbs, if you will, the longer light bars, if you will. So they offered those, were the ones that I purchased off of eBay, only were 53 centimeters in length, and that's all that they came in. I was a bit worried about buying the longer lights through the mail for fear of them being damaged in shipping. And at the time, the 53 centimeter lights worked for me. So Intro Grow has 53 and like 110 centimeter length lights. Now my old lights that I was using were 80 watt lights. So I had, I don't know how many 80 watt light bars, but those add up. And I was able to replace two 80 watt bars with one 45 watt bar, because the Intro Grow lights, if you get them in the 53 centimeters, they use 26 watts. And if you get them in the 110, they use like 42 watts. So I'm replacing one 42 watt bar is replacing two 80 watt bars. And that's why I chose these, because that's technically going to be saving me money, because watts is how much power or electricity is used by the light bar to emit the light. So I'm hoping with my next power bill that I see a big change, because I think I've replaced 8 or 10 of those bars, 80 watt bars, with half as many 42 watt bars. So that should make a big difference, and that's the main driver for why I purchased these bars. Now, as far as wavelengths and things go and what they put out, we'll get into that as well, but On the box for me, when I bought the Intra-Grow lights, all of the information, oh, buy my lights because I have 6,500K and I put out 3,000 lumens and I use only 26 watts. For me, because of the research I did, I knew that the lumens and the kelvins didn't really mean a lot in regards to plant growth, because that's a measure of the human ability to see and perceive light. So we can see the light and we can tell whether it's a warm light or a cool light. That's your lumens and your kelvins. But it told me how much power it used to produce those. Now what I did do before I went to the store and bought these is I looked up the spectrums of light and how that falls into what plants need. Do they need the full spectrum white light? Do they need just the pink and blue and purple lights and things of that nature? And this is where we're going to now talk about spectrum and nanometers, because this is what is important. Now you can use the Kelvin, which gives you the idea of how the light appears to the human eye, for some loose correlations to what nanometers, the wavelength of light, produces that you see as either warm or cool. But it's really a lot easier to, before you go and spend the money, do your due diligence, do your research, and look up the spectrum and the nanometers. So let's get more specific here in regards to nanometers. Okay, so nanometers measures the wavelengths of visible light. And the human eye can pick up and see in a certain wavelength range. And plants need a certain wavelength range to grow and use their chlorophyll better. Basically, you measure what the plants use through photosynthetic active radiation. So that's the part of the light spectrum that the plants use. And that runs on a nanometers of about 400 to 700 nanometers. And if you kind of look, I'll put a graph in here on the Kelvin spectrum of what the eye can see. You know, that runs right through, you know, daytime, morning, light-ish levels, hours to, you know, full sun in the middle of the afternoon. So that kind of gives you an idea there. So yeah, you want to look for the nanometers of light. And we can get really specific into it on what each level goes through, but basically plants need a bit more red-blue than the human eye necessarily needs to see, but the plants need that little bit of extra, you know, red-blue to create the chlorophyll and to grow and create the growth that it needs as well. So when you buy, the boxes are going to be very misleading what's written on the outside for some brands. Now, maybe Spider Farmer will have more information printed on the outside of their boxes. Again, with each of these companies, you can get onto their websites or you can look them up online to see what wavelengths that they offer. Then the next question is, okay, there's the blurple lights that offer, you know, sort of the higher end, the blue reds of that spectrum, but they don't provide so much as the yellow greens. I'm growing in full spectrum white light because I like the way it looks to my eyes better than what they call the blurple lights or the red and purple lights. Okay, so there you have it, a quasi-deep basic dive into grow lights and how to purchase them if you're a new grower or if you're wanting to do some indoor growing and you're kind of confused as to what's written on the box versus what you hear on the internet of different people talking about different lights. Now, the big thing I can suggest to you is to really get on the internet, get to know the brand of light you're wanting to buy. You can get just as good of lights as, say, Harvey Max or Spider Farmer for maybe a little bit less money. You'll get the same light spectrum and nanometers that are coming out of those lights. You may require more wattage to run those lights or less wattage, so really do your research. Because I didn't spend nearly as much money on my lights as I could have had I, say, bought Spider Farmer. Introgrow is a brand name light, but it's not as bougie, if you will, say as Spider Farmer, but the lights are just as good. So yeah, if you've got the spare cash to flash around, spend $400 a light for Spider Farmers. I don't have that kind of cash, so I spent $109 for 110 centimeter length bulbs. You can definitely buy them completely off label and save even a lot more money than that if you buy them off of Amazon or eBay. Again, you'll need to get into the specs of each light, really dig into those websites to see what the waveforms, wavelengths, and nanometers are being put out, because they'll likely describe to you what their light is like in kelvins, lumens, and wattage. And wattage is how much power you're going to use to produce the light, and the kelvins and the lumens directly relate to how the human eye can see or perceive the light. So those two really mean almost nothing in regards to what you want to grow. So it is really important that you get on the internet and you can type in Harvey Mex nanometer spectrums, and it'll bring up the manufacturer's details, and you'll be able to see. So your basic range is about 400 to 700 nanometers. Some places will go, we have bloom bars that run on slightly different nanometers, and we have grow bars that run on different nanometers. Have I seen the difference between a grow bar and a bloom bar? No. Have I been growing long enough to see a difference between the two? No. From my research, do I think it's necessary for you to change out your lights depending on your period of growing? Are you growing them for foliage, or are you growing them for blooms? No, I don't see any difference for that. You can see that you can get adequate plant growth and even get orchids to bloom using compact fluorescent bulbs. They do produce the same sort of nanometer light waves, just not as big of a spread of them, and they're not designed specifically for that. So that's where the grow lights come in. But you can grow lights underneath, regular fluorescent bulbs like you would see in your gymnasium at school. That's completely possible. But if you're going to spend the money on the grow lights, it will help the plants grow a little bit better than just your, compact fluorescent bulbs. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg on them. You certainly can if you have the available cash to splash around for them. But take your time, do a bit of research, find out what their wavelengths are in nanometers, and do they do the full spectrum between 400 and 700, keeping in mind that the Ks, the kelvins, relate to how you see the light. Is it warm light? Is it cool light? That does run a little bit with the nanometers. Again, it gets very, very complicated. So like I said, I'm making this super basic. So hopefully I haven't confused the absolute crap out of everyone. So when going to buy grow lights, in a pinch, go to the websites that looks like your marijuana growers buy their lights from, and buy the lights from them, because they certainly do work. Their aim is the same as ours, to get vegetative and bud growth. Or you can, do your own research and buy them independently at your local aquaponics stores. Find out what brands they carry. Get on the internet, research what kind of lights and wavelengths, nanometers that those lights produce. And as always with the orchid growing indoors, it's hit or miss and trial and error. But for the most part, really look for your wavelengths to be within the full spectrum and running about 400 to 700 nanometers. That will not be printed on the box. I would say from what I've seen printed on some of the boxes at the stores, the kelvins or the Ks you want to look for are about 6,500 K, and the lumens, just ignore those completely, because that is just the fact that human eyes can see them. A lot of plants grow within the same lumen spectrum that the human eye can see. Really what we're interested in is the wavelengths and the nanometers. And you can get on the internet, type in the brand name of your light, and get that cleared up really quickly, and then you'll be educated when you go into the store or onto eBay when you make the purchase. There again, I hope that's clear as mud. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. A subscribe would be great. And everyone have a fabulous day out there. Cheers.